Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our weekly 30 minutes of Torah study. The topic for tonight's class is the holiday of Purim. We'll begin with a brief overview of the holiday of Purim. The jolly festival of Purim is celebrated every year on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Adar, late winter, early spring. It commemorates the salvation of the Jewish people in ancient Persia from Haman's plot to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, infants and women, in a single day, as recorded in the Megillah, the biblical book of Esther. The Persian Empire of the 4th century before the Common Era extended over 127 lands, and all the Jews were its subjects. When King Ahasuerus and his wife, Queen Vashti, executed for failing to follow his orders, he arranged a beauty pageant to find a new queen. A Jewish girl, Esther, found favor in his eyes and became the new queen, though she refused to divulge her nationality. Meanwhile, the Jew-hating Haman was appointed prime minister of the empire. Mordechai, the leader of the Jews and Esther's cousin, defied the king's orders and refused to bow to Haman. Haman was incensed, and he convinced the king to issue a decree ordering the extermination of all the Jews on the 13th day of Adar, a date chosen by a lottery Haman made. Mordechai galvanized all the Jews, convincing them to repent, fast, and pray to God. Meanwhile, Esther asked the king and Haman to join her for a feast. At a subsequent feast, Esther revealed to the king her Jewish identity. Haman was hanged, Mordechai was appointed prime minister in his stead, and a new decree was issued granting the Jews the right to defend themselves against their enemies. On the 13th of Adar, the Jews mobilized and killed many of their enemies. On the 14th of Adar, they rested and celebrated in the capital city of Shushan. They took one more day to finish the job. So this is the basics of the story of the holiday of Purim, which most people are familiar with. However, there's another part of the story that not everyone is necessarily familiar with. Now, the miracle of Purim, the story took place in the year 3,338. 900 years before the story of Purim, the Torah was given in the year 2,448. And there's a critical detail about the holiday of Purim that directly links the holiday of Purim with the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai 900 years before. The Torah tells us that the Jews stood at the base of Mount Sinai when they received the Torah. The Talmud comments on the precise language the Torah uses. As they stood at the bottom of the mountain, Rabbi Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa said, the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain. And the verse teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain above the Jews like a barrel and said to them, if you accept the Torah, excellent. And if not, there will be your burial. Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov said, from here, there is a substantial caveat to the obligation to fulfill the Torah. So the Talmud says, turns out, Mount Sinai was actually a life or death experience. The Torah uses the word tachas, which means not that the Jews were at the foot of the mountain. The word tachas means underneath. The Jews were underneath the mountain. God held it above their heads and said, either you accept the Torah or I will bury you right here. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, this means something very simple. The Jews accepted the Torah under duress. Any lawyer, any legal scholar, any beginner rabbi would know that if you enter into a contract against your will, with a gun against your head, or in this circumstance, a mountaintop being held underneath your head, the contract is null and void. It's not binding at all. Does that mean that there is an opt-out for the Jewish people? Does that mean a Jew can say, it's been fantastic, it's been really wonderful, however, I never chose to be a part of this at all. A mountain was placed over my head all those years ago. Thank you, God, but no thank you. I am going to leave, no penalty at all. The Talmud addresses this question, and it bases its comments on the words of the Megillah. So we'll first look at the words of the Megillah. It says in the Megillah that the Jews upheld and took upon themselves and upon their seed and upon all those who joined them that it is not to be revoked. to make these 2 days according to their script and according to their appointed time every year. So in a simple, straightforward reading of this verse, these verses are saying that the Jews took upon themselves the holiday of Purim. The miracle happened. The next year they decided, you know what? This day is so important, so significant and valuable that we are going to make this day a holiday, not just for this year, but forever. Purim is going to be forever a part of the Jewish people. It cannot be revoked. However, the Talmud says there's a much deeper meaning. Rava said, even though they were coerced to accept the Torah at Sinai, they again accepted it willingly in the time of Achashverosh. As the verse states, the Jews upheld and took upon themselves, meaning they upheld what they had already accepted upon themselves at Sinai. So there was, in fact, an out clause. The Jewish people could have said, you know what, it's been great, but I didn't sign up for this. You forced us on Mount Sinai. However, after the holiday of Purim, no longer could a Jew opt out, because the Jewish people during the holiday of Purim freely accepted upon themselves the Torah. So therefore, we have a connection between Purim and Mount Sinai. So at Sinai, God threatened the Jews into accepting the Torah by hanging the mountain over their heads. Years later on Purim, they affirmed their prior acceptance of the Torah at Sinai. So this really adds a whole nother layer of meaning to the importance of the story of Purim, because it solidified and ratified in an unrevocable way the Torah which we received at Mount Sinai 900 years before the story of Purim. However, this leads us with some questions. Question number one, why would God need to threaten the Jewish people? The Jewish people just came out of Egypt. God performed the 10 plagues for them. He split the Red Sea for them. What was the Jews' response to God's offering of the Torah? Nasa v'nishma. We will do, God, whatever you say. Tell us the details later. We're in. It would appear that the mindset and attitude of the Jewish people at Mount Sinai was, we are in. Why would God need to threaten and punish the Jewish people? Besides for the legal issue, which would make it appear to be totally illegitimate, the entire Mount Sinai experience would be one of coercion and therefore ultimately null and void. It's bizarre. The Jewish people said, I'm in, we're in, let's do this. Why put the mountain on top of their head? Did God not trust the Jewish people? Question number two, what happened that was so unique to Purim that rendered it the time of ultimate acceptance? More than any other miraculous deliverance that the Jewish people had experienced up to that point. For the 900 years since the Jews received the Torah at Sinai, there were dozens upon dozens of battles, not minor battles, but major battles that determined the destiny, the direction, the future of the Jewish people. There was conquering the land of Israel itself. They had to deal with the Philistines time and time and time again. They had to deal with the Assyrians. There was a war. There was idol worship. There was the splitting of the king. Why does Purim ratify the giving of the Torah? Not when Elijah battled the prophets of Baal, won, defeated them, wiped them out, saved the Jewish people. What is so significant about the holiday of Purim that we say, oh, it's when the Jews won on Purim, that is when they ratified the giving of the Torah, which took place 900 years before. The Jews have been battling and winning for 900 years. So the Alter Rebbe explains this passage in the Talmud, that when the Talmud says that God placed Mount Sinai on top of the heads of the Jewish people, this is not to be understood literally. God did not physically take the mountain and actually uproot it, suspend it above the heads of the Jewish people and threaten them with it. It is a metaphor. What's the metaphor? What is the Talmud trying to convey to us with this really cool story? The Alter Rebbe writes, this is why God overturned the mountain above them like a barrel. As in the verse, his right hand embraces me. It implies a degree of expression of God's supernal love for the Jewish people. This love embraces the collective Jewish people as when one hugs another person, surrounding them from all sides, even the back, so that they cannot move away and are compelled to stand there facing the lover. In other words, because God's supernal love, a love awakened within the soul of the Jewish people, uplifting them to the point where they would declare, "We will do and we will obey," revealing this light of love from above, such as it says, "I love you," said God, awakens a corresponding love from below to above. This is the elevation of the Jewish collective and the expiration of their souls towards him. So the Alter Rebbe says, yes, the Jewish people were forced into accepting the Torah, but not in the literal sense, the way the Talmud says. It wasn't that there was a mountain hanging above their head. Rather, the love that God showed to the Jewish people when he redeemed them from slavery, literally taking them out from the worst possible circumstance on life, punishing their enemies with 10 plagues, splitting the Red Sea, right, and burying the enemies behind them, feeding them the man falling from heaven. This was like an overwhelming, overpowering expression of love of God. There was no way that they could have said no. It would be impossible. You may recall that the Torah tells us that when the Torah was given and God recited the 10 commandments, after the first commandments, the souls of the Jewish people jumped out of their body. Right? They were so inspired, they were so moved, they wanted to merge, they wanted to become one, they wanted to experience the ultimate unity with God. Their souls literally left their bodies. The Alter Rebbe says this is what the Talmud is trying to communicate. The Jewish people had no choice. It was as if a mountain was placing over their head. They were so compelled due to the love that God showed them. Therefore, they said, God, we love you so much. Whatever you say, we will do. So yes, they were forced, not in a violent manner, but it was due to the overwhelming love that God shared to the Jewish people, that the Jewish people simply reflected that love back to Hashem. This is the meaning of overturning of the mountain. It suggests the supernal love, which is referred to as a mountain. It is likened to a barrel, which suggests something that surrounds and overwhelms all worlds, a light so intense that it awakens a love within them. This then is the meaning of our sage's statement. From there is a substantial, This then is the meaning of our sage's statement, that from here, there is a substantial caveat to the obligation to fulfill the Torah. In other words, the feeling that stirred in their hearts to accept the Torah with such sacrifice and surrender that they declared, we will do and we will obey, was not entirely a result of their own choice and desire. Rather, it was on account of the revelation of God's love from on high that inspired the reciprocal love towards him. So the Talmud was trying to say, the Jews accepting the Torah at Mount Sinai, it was not a result of free choice. It was a result of the overwhelming love that God showed to them that they simply reflected back. It wasn't so much their own choice. So, answer to number one. Why would God need to threaten the Jewish people at Sinai? Of course, God wasn't threatening. He overwhelmed them with so much love, giving them no other choice to accept. So the question is, did we really accept the Torah willingly at Mount Sinai? I don't know. Take away the miracles, take away the redemption from slavery, take away the 10 plagues, take away the splitting of the Red Sea, take away the man falling from the sky. It was just a regular Tuesday evening. Are the Jewish people in? If 3,000 years ago, God came to the Jewish people, a nation that was peaceably living in the land of Israel, nobody bothering them, life was good, and God says, I want you to be my people, here's your Torah, will you accept it? I don't know. Do we know if they would accept it? Yet what happened in the story of Purim? It was 900 years later after the Exodus. The Jewish people had their own country and their own temple. And the Jews were exiled from their temple, from their country. The temple was destroyed. It appeared at this point in time in history that the Jewish people had no future. Temple destroyed, country devastated. There was assimilation that was afflicting the Jewish people from all sides. And then the most powerful person in the world issues a decree of genocide of the Jewish people, every man, woman, and child. There was no more perfect time in all of Jewish history for the Jewish people to opt out and to say, God, we did not sign up for this. You coerced us. You forced us with overwhelming love, but you forced us nonetheless. There is no future in this. We have no country. We have no land. We have no temple. We are going to be killed. We're going to be murdered. I opt out. I'm turning in my Jewish identity card. But did they do that? Jewish tradition tells us no. Not a single Jew opted out. Let's go to the Alter Rebbe. Had they apostatized, God forbid, nothing would have happened to them, for the decree only applied to Jews. Nevertheless, not one of them even entertained an outside thought, God forbid, and instead sacrificed their lives for God. Haman was not interested in what the Nazis were interested in. Haman did not say, if you're 1/8 Jewish, right? If your father's father's father was Jewish or something like that, then we're going to kill you. He was not concerned with that. If a person abandoned, left, gave up their Jewish identity, you would live, you would prosper happily ever after in Persia. The Jews had the best opportunity to do that, yet they chose not to. Not one of them even entertained an outside thought, and they stood up against Haman with self-sacrifice to remain as Jews. They did it defiantly, they did it publicly, and they did it openly. Let's go to the Medrash. After Haman prepared the tree that would serve as Mordechai's gallows, he went to Mordechai and found him sitting in the study hall with the children surrounding him. They were wearing sackcloth, studying Torah, screaming and crying. He counted them and found 12,000 or 22,000 children. He put chains of iron on them and assigned guards to watch them. He said, tomorrow I will first kill these children and then hang Mordechai. Their mothers brought them food and drink and told them to eat and drink today so they wouldn't die hungry. Immediately, they put their heads on the Torah and swore by the life of Mordechai, their teacher, not to eat or drink, but rather to die fasting. Their moaning and crying went up to heaven, and God heard their crying. At that time, God's mercy was awakened, and he got up from the seat of judgment and sat in the seat of mercy. He said, what is this great cry that I hear, like sheep and goats? Moshe, our teacher, stood up and said, it is not sheep or goats. It is the children of your nation who are fasting and praying. At that time, God took the letters that he signed with a decree against the Jewish people and ripped them up. He then caused Ahasuerus great discomfort, as it is written, and that night the king couldn't sleep. They could have opted out. Not only were their lives on the line, the lives of their children were on the line. But no, not one opted out. They gathered together publicly, thousands upon thousands of children, in order to daven to Hashem, to pray to God for their salvation, and they were responded. How did they do this? Where did they get the courage to do so? Is it because God showed to them miracles that transcended nature? Is it because they were led by a prophet who communicated to God on a daily basis? Absolutely not. There was no 10 plagues. There was no splitting of the Red Sea. There was no voice of God communicating to them from on high through a prophet. There was none of that. There was no overwhelming feeling of love being expressed to them from God from heaven. Where did it come from? It came from within. Why did the Jewish people do it? It was a personal choice. Each and every Jew chose without being under threat of coercion, not positive or negative coercion. They looked inside, and they made a personal choice. They chose to be a Jew. This is why the holiday of Purim is such a major day. Jewish tradition says that when Mashiach comes, all the holidays on the calendar will pale in comparison and significance to the revelation of God that we experience during the era of Mashiach, except for Purim. Purim is so powerful. The Jews chose freely to be Jewish under the most difficult of circumstances. It surpasses perhaps even the day of the giving of the Torah. Therefore, even in the Messianic era, it will be the greatest of holidays. Ravina, he was one of the two rabbis who edited and compiled the Talmud. It is said of Ravina that he fasted every single day of the year. Now, probably except for Shabbos. But he fasted every day, except for the holiday of Shavuos and the holiday of Purim. He equated Purim with Shavuos. Shavuos is the holiday that the Torah was given. Purim is the holiday where the giving of the Torah was ratified, could never be revoked, and is eternally part of the Jewish people. Now, being that this is the case, this leads us to a question. Why doesn't anything about the holiday reflect this watershed achievement? What I basically said to you right now, that one of the major and most significant points about the holiday of Purim is that it is the day that we fully accepted the Torah upon ourselves in such a way we could not opt out. It's forever. If that's the case, don't you think it would be part of the prayer service? Maybe one of the mitzvahs would be reflected in it. Maybe there should be some mention of this idea on the holiday. Oops, sorry. On Purim, but we'll get back to that in a second. Hold on a minute. Okay. Why doesn't anything about the holiday reflect this watershed moment? So if we understand this correctly, the idea of Purim here is that we freely chose to accept the Torah. Now, what's the difference between choosing the Torah or the Torah being forced upon us? It's not about what we're doing, but it's how we do it. What do I mean by that? If somebody forces you to do something, you have to do it. But will there be excitement, energy, and enthusiasm? Probably not. You'll do it because you have to. It's an obligation and it's a duty. You'll do it, you check it off the list, you move on to something else. However, when you choose to do something, there's going to be energy there. There's going to be passion there. There's going to be excitement there because you chose to do it. And this is exactly what the miracles of the mitzvahs of the holiday of Purim are about. The mitzvahs are not what we're obligated to do. Rather, it's about how we do it. So therefore, all of the mitzvahs that we do on Purim reflect the idea of choice, not of force. Mitzvah number one that we have on Purim is the giving of shalach manos, right? We share gifts of food to people. Is this a mitzvah that is only relevant, that only applies on Purim? Absolutely not. This is something which applies and is relevant every single day of the year. I can tell you in my household on Friday, every single Shabbos without exception, right, we share food with people in the community. Whatever the reason, they had a baby, someone was sick, or maybe we know that they could use a pick-me-up. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm sure you do it as well. Everyone in their own way shares gifts of food for people when the circumstance calls for it. The concept of shalach manos, of sharing gifts of food, is something which is relevant and meaningful and applies every single day of the year. It's not like matzah, which is only connected to Pesach. It's not like the shofar, which is only connected to Rosh Hashanah. Shalach manos, gifts of food, we eat food every day. Yet when we do it on Purim, it's done with an added degree of excitement, passion, and enthusiasm. In Jewish communities, there are people who go to great lengths when it comes to the shalach manos. They pick out a unique theme, shopping, packaging, distributing. It becomes an entire production. It may be an ordinary, regular activity, but on Purim, it's not about checking a box. It's about doing it with excitement and passion, making it fun, doing it fancy, making it elaborate. That's what Shalach Manos is all about. The second mitzvah of Purim is Matanos Levyonim, giving tzedakah to the poor. Giving tzedakah to the poor is not only relevant on Purim. Every single day, without exception, a Jew is meant to give tzedakah. Tzedakah is a 365-day a year, 24/7 obligation to help and make sure that people who have less than enough have. What is so special about Purim? On Purim, we go above and beyond. On Purim, Jewish law says, whoever sticks out his hand to you, you give them. During the rest of the year, maybe you want to be careful. Who do you give? When do you give? Why do you give? How much to give? You got to do a little research. Purim, we go all out. Purim, we go crazy. Purim, you give to anyone, no matter what. In big Jewish communities, Orthodox communities, often you have some wealthy individuals who will sit the whole day and give out money, nonstop. They sit in their house, there's a line out the door, and people know you are going to get an envelope with money. Tens of thousands of dollars are given out. Yeshivas send out their students to raise money for their yeshivas. It's a known thing. They coordinate. They sing songs. They dress in unique costumes as they go around the neighborhoods collecting money. It happens to be once the Rebbe said at a Fabrengen that anyone who sticks out his hand, that the Rebbe is going to give tzedakah. The entire the Rebbe is giving, the Rebbe is giving, the Rebbe is giving. The Fabrengen was over. The Rebbe was leaving 770. He was walking to his car. People are sticking out. The Rebbe is giving, the Rebbe is giving, the Rebbe is giving. The Rebbe is in his car. People are sticking their hands through the car's window. People surrounded the car so much. They were on top of the car. The tires popped. The tires popped right under the car because of people trying to get the tzedakah from the Rebbe. What is Purim? It's not just simply giving tzedakah. It's with a passion. It's with an energy. I'm choosing to do this. I'm not just checking off an obligation. Tzedakah is on a whole other level on the holiday of Purim. The Rebbe writes, according to the Manos Halevi, a prominent commentary to the Megillah, the idea of Mashalach Manos is to increase camaraderie. This is a mitzvah throughout the year. The mitzvah is Avos Yisrael, considered to be a cardinal principle of the Torah. However, the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael doesn't require one to actively seek out someone with whom to be kind. The novelty of Mashalach Manos is that one is required to seek out a friend and present them with a food package, something the beneficiary can immediately enjoy, immediately feeling the impact of friendship. The same is with Matanos Levyonim. The mitzvah of tzedakah is enforced all year round, but on Purim, there's an added dimension. It's not enough to give to a poor person if and when you chance upon them. No, a person must actively seek out two poor people and give them gifts. The Rebbe continues. This highlights the Purim theme of recommitment. These are mitzvahs the Jews already committed to uphold, namely the obligation for such mitzvahs is enforced regardless. Yet on Purim, they are infused with an added recommitment, a reinforcement, and renewed vigor. So what is the message of the holiday of Purim? It is about making Judaism yours. It's about owning it. On the original holiday of Purim, the Jews could have opted out, but they said, no, this is mine. This is who I am. I want this for me, for my family, forever. Purim is about recommitting and reconnecting to this idea. It's not about I have to. Purim is about I want to. And we do that with joy, with a celebration, with a party, with drinking l'chaim, with singing and dancing. The Shema Shmuel writes, there are two ways to serve God. Some serve God because they are commanded to do so and cannot get themselves out of it. If there is any way to get out of it, they would grab the opportunity, for they see it as a burden. Some, however, serve God because they truly wish to do so. If there is anything in the way, they seek to remove the obstacles with whatever means possible to do the will of God, because they really wish to fulfill God's will and not to get out of it. A sure way to determine the difference between the two approaches is to see if the person serves God with joy. If the person eagerly awaits the opportunity to serve God, as did Rabbi Akiva when he said, when will I have the opportunity to give my life for God, when he was martyred? This indicates that he is among those who serve God wholeheartedly. But if he does not do it with joy, the indication is that he is acting as if under duress, strictly to discharge his obligation. Purim is not about discharging obligations. Purim is not about I have to. Purim is about I want to. Purim is choosing to be Jewish with the greatest possible joy. And we need to take that joy of Purim and bring it with us every single day of the year. That way, when our children see how we practice and how we observe Judaism, that is out of the utmost joy, they also will do it, not just because they have to, because you're making them do it, because they want to, because it brings them the ultimate joy as well. Next week, we have the Torah portion of Shmini, as well as the Parsha of Parah. The class is Tuesday at 7:30, 30 minutes of Torah study. Remember, tomorrow night begins Purim. So we have a Megillah reading at the shul. 6:45 is Mincha. 7:15 is Ma'ariv. 7:28 is a Megillah reading, followed by grilled cheese and tomato soup. On Thursday morning, we have services starting at 6:30 a.m. 7 a.m. is the first opportunity to hear the Megillah in the shul. In the afternoon at 5:30, there's another opportunity to hear the Megillah. And then 6 o'clock, we have our Purim in the Big Apple, New York themed Purim party, incredible food, and a lot of fun. I hope to see everyone there.